Howdy, all of you delicious people. I'm here today to review Assault on Precinct 13, 2005, because of course this is a remake. So, I feel like soon we're probably going to get bombarded with Ethan Hawke movies, and any kind of the characters who are to be involved in Moon Knight are probably going to go on and, like, we're just going to get bombarded with a bunch of movies and shows, everything that, of course, they were on at some point, because that's what tends to happen for a lot of times, of which when like other places think like, oh yeah, this is going to be the big show, this is going to be the big movie, oh, we should go on and try to find every single movie that so and so actors in. That's what just tends to happen. So instead of having me go on and review Gattaca, which is basically just Ethan Hawke pretending to be Jude Law and consistently trying to put that kind of thing into play so Ethan Hawke's character can go on and be an astronaut. I've seen Gattaca. I've seen Gattaca more than once. But, like, I just like Assault on Precinct 13. It's a good, interesting film that has a pretty good cast. Immediately, like, John Leguizamo comes to mind. And, like, yeah, I'm always won over by a John Leguizamo movie. But conveniently, there's also a really good story, really good cast. There's strategy in this movie. And so, right now, there's probably not a convenient way to say that you've seen this movie. Because, of course, there's a bunch of renting options. You can rent this on Vudu or YouTube or some other kind of inconvenient thing. I'm going to recommend for you to go out of your way to say that you've seen this film by going on into a Google search and searching a app called Letter C Movies and app. That you can go out of your way to Google search, find, download, and be able to say you can see whatever you want. You can also go on to search an app called Fox HD Movies, which the logo will say so, but a title will say something different. It'll say Play 1080p HD, but if you search the word Fox HD Movies, you'll be able to find an app that you can dare in fact say you go out of your way to see whatever you want. Also, in a Google Play Store, you can TV Crush would be the thing that you would search in a Google Play Store. There is an app that says HD Movies with a crown off to the side. You can justify going and downloading that, of course, app. And you may not be able to see Assault on Precinct 13, but you'll be able to see a number of apps or a number of movies and shows that you can conveniently go and watch for absolutely free. I didn't search through that app, but more than likely you'll be able to see a number of things. So, Assault on Precinct 13. Teeing it up, what is this movie exactly about? What is it all? What is it in? What is it Anyways, what was he saying there? I don't know. So, we have a police station that's stuck in a blizzard or a snowstorm, and so inconveniently we have this police station that's shutting down, and they're not very well manned, and so we have a prison bus that is transporting a bunch of, you guessed it, prisoners, and they are making their way to forcibly have to spend the night at this police station that, again, is almost kind of shutting down. Everything is kind of being transferred over to another precinct, and so therein lies the problem. So we have this big, massive threat of a man that is to be called Bishop here, who is played by Lawrence Fishburne, that it seems that people are trying to break Bishop out so they can either kill him or they can go on and just take him. So, with this story, we're now having anybody else that's at this police station trying to desperately defend for their lives as they're realizing what's really going on here. And Bishop is to give them the 411 about what is actually going on. So, really just an interesting way that this movie plays out, and thoroughly enjoyed it. With the exclusion of how, like, the very beginning of this movie just plays out, because there might be an unsavory moment for those of you that are dog lovers. So, my bad. But other than that, once we get past that moment, it becomes a good film. So, with that said, let's go on to that double five time territory. Let's just go into spoilers about this one, because it's about that time. Grading wise, what would the grading of this movie be? Like, I would say that this is a good film, or a solid good film. Uh, Really, people would probably have problems with it. Uh, Maybe someone would say that the guys could have easily broke into this police station, and they could have easily taken everybody down, because there's a lot of points and times where you just kind of see like certain kind of SWAT like characters just conveniently making their way into any part of this police station, and then we just have Ethan Hawke's character running around shooting everybody in the head while people are just watching on as they're possibly going to die. So, with that said, let's just go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about the time again to spoil this movie. So, very beginning of it, we have an unsavory moment. So, Jake, of course, is to be this undercover cop who is trying to drug deal with a guy named Milos. Some cocaine. Here's some cocaine. How would you like some cocaine? And so Milos is to go on and talk about his dog, because his dog is kind of getting really aggressive. We have Jake with a woman on this couch who is probably sleeping things off. We have another guy that's in another room that comes into this room. And so Jake is going on and, like, saying, "Hey, like, your dog's a little aggressive there. Like, could you quiet this dog down?" And so Milo proceeds to go on and punch this dog, which is of course, a very heinous thing to do. But so all of a sudden we have Jake's other undercover cop that comes in, and we all of a sudden have Milo's man talking to Milos in this other language. And so Milos is saying, "Oh, okay." And Jake's like, "What?" So Milos is mentioning that his partner has seen uh, the guy that Jake is with here. He's seen him before. And this guy is a police officer. And so these guys are realizing that these guys are cops. So they're running off. They're getting out of here. We have Jake, who's telling his other officers to scramble out of here to go on and try to catch these men, which basically leads to both of their deaths, sadly. We have one of Jake's undercover officers, who's the guy, is to kind of get shot in this hallway, and then Jake's female partner is trying to go on to take down another guy, and she ends up getting shot in the chest. Jake goes on and is to take down these men, and then Jake finds his female undercover partner, and he's trying to, like, CPR her, trying to keep her alive, but she's dead, sadly. So Jake, of course, was to get shot in the leg. He was to get shot in the knee, and so now Jake is having this be some time later, and Jake is still technically limping, and he's taking painkillers, and so Jake is a sergeant at a police station, And so there is horrible weather, horrible blizzard conditions, uh, possibly wind shield also, and all that kind of stuff. Wind chill. So we have Jake that is to get up in the morning, who is kind of having his dog jump on this bed. And I'm kind of wondering if that's the exact same dog from the early part of this movie. So Jake goes on and he like gets himself up, is taking medications and all kinds of stuff, kind of slapping himself with some water to get ready for his what is to probably be another awful day where he might have to shoot somebody. So Jake is just kind of driving around, listening to the radio as he's kind of being blurry because of the storm. And so this radio guy is like, "Yeah, we're gonna get a really bad storm out there." And Jake is like, "Well, no, like, really? I'm not Sherlock Holmes here, but I could have figured that out." So, and like immediately when I'm starting to see like certain characters that are like sliding their way uh through the snow, I'm like, yeah, this is really bad. Because a lot of times, like, because I would know, you kind of get a lot of really bad roads where it's just like pure ice, and that has to be like the freaking worst. And what's really bad is when you're walking on a sidewalk and the whole sidewalk is just pure ice. And there's no way to conveniently just go on and just like, well, I'll just walk on the snow then. That seems like a better idea. No. Because if you walk in the snowy part, yeah, you're going to fall right into the freaking snow because the snow is not substantial enough to hold your weight. And you'll just like collapse inside the snow. So you basically have to walk on ice, which is a horrible thing. Um, and very rarely do I have I fell. But when like a whole sidewalk is just filled to the brim of ice, yeah, you're basically like you're not even walking anymore. You're really just like hoping that you're going to slide your way to wherever you're going. It's awful. That's what happens. So, and there's no way to get around it, and like especially if you're like at a normal like street or something, it's the worst. So it's great. Thumbs up, everybody. So because I would know, because I live in this thing called a northern state. So I live in the cold, in because I like it. It's great. It's better than being hot. Because winter is just a soothing feeling. Moving on. Jay, hey, I don't like the cold. Jake goes on and is to make it to his precinct, and these guys are mentioning that they're packing everything up because, of course, they're going to transition to this other precinct, and so and all the calls are going to get redirected to that precinct because this is their last day at this police station. It's like, man, how times have really just like Jake just keeps moving on to place to place to place, and like he's an undercover cop, and then he transitions to be a sergeant and all that jazz. So Jake is talking to, of course, Iris, who is basically wearing these fishnet stockings. And like, man, did this girl like really just like what a woman, I tell you, that Iris. Just like, hey, if the girl isn't exactly she's looking for work, this movie might definitely help. Dre. So we have Iris telling Jake here that he is to have an appointment with his Dr. Alex Sabian, who is actually Maria Bello, who Maria has gone on and done like a ton of films, History of Violence, the Jet Li Mummy movie, a number of other things that probably I can't think at this quite second exactly what all she's done, But believe me, she's done a ton of stuff. So, Coyote Ugly, there we go. Why is he saying Coyote Ugly? Isn't John Goodman in that movie? Yeah, he is in that movie. Why does he know that? I don't know. I've seen everything. That makes a lot of sense. Anyways, so Jake is going on and meeting up with Dr. Alex Sabian, and Jake is only defense of every time that Alex just say anything. Jake consistently says is like, well, that's because you want to get with me. Like, you just want to be with me so badly, Alex. I just, like, or Dr. Sabian, like, yeah, like, you definitely want some of this. And some of that. Anyways, so Dr. Sabian is asking Jake, like, why Jake has just kind of, like, stayed being a sergeant, and, like, he could have probably moved on and do other things. And Jake asks Dr. Sabian, it's like, well, hey, like, you're here on New Year's Eve, and, like, you're all dressed up to the nines. Like, are you doing this just because, like, you want to get with me? And Dr. Sabian is like, well, no, like, I'm going to a party right after this is over. But, like, thanks for the compliment. So, Jake wants to go on and see his file, and see what Dr. Sabian had wrote about him. And because this appointment is kind of going nowhere, and so when Sabian leaves, Jake is to kind of pull away this file, and he's to read everything that she says about him. And then when Dr. Sabian is forced to make her way back here because she had to walk all the way back because her car had went into a ditch, I think, and she's going to get towed out. And Dr. Sabian is just kind of waiting for this tow, and Jake is confirming with Dr. Sabian. It's like, well, this tow isn't going to be coming anytime soon. Like, believe me, like, nobody wants to go out in the weather like this. So yeah, you're just stuck here, sadly. So speaking of getting stuck, we have, of course, Bishop, who is at this church, talking to a guy named Ray Portnow. Portnow? What a goofy name. So Bishop is in this church, sitting next to Portnow, and it seems we're at an impasse here where Bishop is not wanting to do what Portnow wants. And so Portnow is whipping out this gun, saying like, hey, you're going to follow me out. Bishop goes and stabs this guy in the neck, kills him, and then makes his way out of this church. Where once Bishop is to make his way out of this church, he's surrounded by police officers, which all of a sudden people are to find out that this man is dead. Bishop is to forcibly make his way back into the church to where he fires off a gun. Where all of a sudden we have a number of police officers that are trying to get to this man also. So, at some point or another, Bishop is to be arrested. So, once Bishop is arrested, we find that, of course, there is a number of police officers, like Captain Marcus Duvall, that do not want Bishop squealing like a canary, because Bishop is to have worked with police officers like Captain Marcus Duvall, and Bishop has gone on to consistently bribe the captain and take 50% of their cut. And so if Bishop is in prison, Bishop might go on and talk about every single name of every single one of these guys so he can go on and get a lighter prison sentence. So Bishop is going with jail. We have at one point where Captain Marcus is looking at this escalator with a bunch of Bishop's men, and one of his partners, who is Mike, is going on and smacking around some of Bishop's men while they're seeing eye to eye in this escalator. So we we go on now, and we of course have Bishop, as well as a number of other prisoners who are to be taken to this bus to be transferred elsewhere to this police station. Because I guess because of the holiday, like they just wanted to have a number of these guys transferred over with police officers like Officer Rosen and Gill that are forced to find out that they're going to need to take all these prisoners to just some police station that is close by that is inconveniently Jake's or Ethan Hawke's. So Rosie and Gil are to transfer all the prisoners over. We have Jake that's telling both Rosie and Gil here that he does not want he doesn't want to hear one word from these prisoners or nothing. He doesn't want to hear a peep. He doesn't want to deal with them. It's like, hey, this is your guys' detail. Like, you deal with them. So these guys are all put into these cells, and so now everybody is just enjoying their new year. The ball is falling, and everybody's partying and celebrating. We have the one moment where, of course, Dr. Sabian, who is stuck there, is to go on and just be like, well, Happy New Year's to Jake. And Jake is like, I knew what you wrote about me. Like, in his mind, he's just like, oh my god, I'm just stuck with this girl. And they weirdly consistently play around in this movie about Dr. Sabian and Jake, whether or not they're going to be boyfriend and girlfriend or not. But with the way this plays out, that is rendered moot. But anyways, so, moot! Anyways, pushing on. So, what ends up happening is we find out after they're celebrating the New Year's, the partying, and some people are probably leaving at this point. So, all of a sudden we have a number of white ski-men people that are kind of surrounding this area. And I'm just like, what am I watching? Cry Wolf right now? What's going on? Man would, like, it's been a while since I've seen, like, a ski masking murderer. Like, I think, like, I started to watch, like, Evil at the Door or something. But for some reason or another, like, I think I went into it, but then, like, I had a reason that I had to go on and do other things, sadly. But I kind of wanted to watch that movie because it has an interesting concept, but it might not be the best quality of film, I think. But anyways, and if any of you were to see that movie, you'll probably understand why. I think it's currently available on Tubi. But anyways, pushing on. So, why is he referencing this stuff? And also, why is he whispering? Jake. So, Jake is to find out that there is a brick coming through this thing called a window. And so one of them is to pick up the brick, and it just says the word Bishop on it. And immediately what everyone should say, it's like, why do these guys all want to play chess? Doesn't make sense. So we then go on and have at one point that the guys are trying to make it into this prison one way or the other, and we start to have a number of the prisoner guards starting to get dead. We sadly enough have one person trying to get through the back door of this where the cells are, and Rosie ends up getting shot and killed, and then Gil ends up getting shot and killed outside by the bus. And so we have Jake who's dragging him in, and so of course we have guys like Gil asking, like, these guys, like, well, hey, like, Why didn't your alarm on that door go off? And we have guys like Jasper mentioning, who is actually Brian Denny. Jasper is mentioning that this alarm hasn't worked for months, and probably because he didn't really care, because it doesn't really seem like there is much for prisoners and so on and so forth for this prison, anyways. So here is the list of the criminals that are to be booked here. So we have Ja Rule, who is to play Smiley here, and he is a guy that is to consistently call himself Smiley as if he's the third person. Very weird and kooky character. Really did enjoy him though. I think for this movie, like this kind of set up Ja Rule to eventually be in a number of prison movies for one reason or another. Because I think he did a prison movie with Steven Seagal at some point. But it's been a while since I remember anything about that movie. We also have uh, a guy named John Leguizamo. You've probably heard of him pretty much every time that I've ever reviewed something, because I tend to try to find John Leguizamo movies a lot, like Gamer, or possibly the more recent thing that I just reviewed recently, called Land of the Dead. But check out Super Mario Brothers if you want a kind of goofy or weird movie. Anyways, John Leguizamo is playing Beck here, and this is to have John Leguizamo being another like paranoid kind of character, where I'm like he kind of plays the same kind of character like in Gamer, but like we just have this kind of like conspiracy theorist guy. That kind of is played by John here, so kind of like it's easily probably within his wheelhouse, because like anything within Leguizamo's wheel is like, like this guy can do it all. Anyways, pushing on. So, and we have Anna, who is to go down for someone else's crime, supposedly, because Anna is saying that she's like, well, hey, like, they were looking for my sister and they got me instead. Like, hey, I feel robbed. Like, because we always have to have that one character that it seems like they're innocent, until proven that they're in a cell, so what can they do? And then, of course, we have Bishop, who is just the character that we've kind of technically seen his crimes. So, we have it, of course, where, like, the police officers are trying to figure out what the heck is going on, to the point where Jake is wanting to have Bishop get all cuffed up, and Jake is going to pull Bishop into this room to ask him, like, hey, why are these guys after you? Because a lot of these guys are immediately thinking that this is Bishop's men, but Bishop confirms to Jake that that isn't the truth. So, Bishop is mentioning that there is a number of police officers that technically want Bishop dead, because he will probably go on and squeal about a number of police officers who are dirty and has been accepting bribes for a long length of time. Length, not girth. Anyways, so Jake is like, okay, well, like that sounds like a reasonable thing for us to really just have to defend ourselves now, because they're not just wanting to get to Bishop, they're going to kill everybody to get to him, and so no one's safe. So, no matter how many times anybody's scramble off, they're gonna wind up dead. So that freaking sucks. So it is what it is. So, Bishop is to go back to his cell, and so how things just start to play out here is we start to get an assortment of guys that are all to be kind of like in SWAT-like gear that are one way or another trying to break into this prison. And so Jake and all the guys are realizing that they're like ridiculously outgunned here, and like once these guys start making it in, like Jake is to have to kind of scramble around and start killing guys, and taking them down. So at one point, we of course have Jake, who's realizing that these guys are trying to break through certain parts of these windows to slide into the cell part to try to take all these prisoners down. And Jake is to run down there and is to take down a couple of these, or try to take a couple of these men down, but he only takes down one. And then Jake, of course, takes the gun. So now all of a sudden we have all the prisoners that are desperately just like, hey, like this isn't safe here. We're gonna get killed. We're gonna get slaughtered. We're just waiting to die here. And Jake is like, oh my god, like, yeah, that's true. Like, these guys don't deserve to just get killed off. And Jake has to also realize that they just need men. They need people. They need, like, bodies to hopefully feel like they can outnumber or last the night. So there's a number of weapons in evidence, and so Jake is to take all these guys into the evidence room to just say, hey, like, pick your poison. Like, pick any kind of weapon and just go on and hope that we're going to last the night. So we have Bishop, who grabs these, like, alcoholic bottles that eventually he, like, puts fire to them. We have Leguizamo, we have Beck, who grabs this samurai sword. I think Ja Rule grabs this bat. And we have Anna that grabs this very old-fashioned, like, Gatling gun or whatever it's called from, like, the kind of the gangster days. So, of course, Jasper is completely against these prisoners being armored up. And Jake is just saying, like, hey, we need the bodies. It doesn't matter anymore that, like what these guys have done, as long as they don't go on and shoot us and try to make their way out, because it just won't happen. So we also have, at one point in this movie, we also have a guy that is driving his way to try to make it back in to the police station, who of course is Capra. So Capra is going on and talking to this police officer that's out there, and so then Capra is to drive back to his police station, and the police officer tries to shoot him, and so Capra desperately tries to scramble to make his way to this police station, and so Jake is running out to try to retrieve Capra, and Capra isn't killed or anything, or shot or anything, but, like, they had to, like, scramble to get out of there. So immediately there's some people that thinking that Capra is some kind of plant, or that it's kind of weird that this guy came late. And Capra is just trying to say, it's like, well, hey man, like, I wanted to just kind of come here to see if like, me and Iris could kind of finally, like, seal the deal. And Iris is like, hey, you picked the wrong night to make a move, and because you're gonna die at some point. So everybody is consistently turning on everybody, but Jasper's really starting it. And so Jasper is consistently, like, at any point is, like, telling all these prisoners, like, hey, give up all your guns. Like, give up all these guns to all these police officers. And Jake is like, no, like, we need them. And Jasper's like, I don't trust these criminals. And Jake's like, you guys don't get it. Like, put your guns down. Put them all down. So we even get at one point where Beck, who's Leguizamo, is kind of thinking that Capra is to kind of be behind all this, to the point of now Bishop is kind of being the leader of the criminals. So Bishop goes on and is to kind of, like, jab Leguizamo in the throat with his hand, and then Bishop is to kind of set Beck straight, and then hands him back his gun. So we have one moment before Beck and Ja Rule's character, who's Smiley, is getting these guns. And we have one moment where we find out that Dr. Sabian is OCD, and she uses these like mathematical equations and problems to, I guess, make it through her stress moments. And I'm like, okay, that's kind of interesting. So Dr. Sabian is rattling these things off. All of a sudden, we have one villainish guy with this big, massive gun who's like, I'm going to take this girl down. All of a sudden, Smiley and Beck come flying in with these swords and this baseball bat and smacking this guy to death. And then, like, Leguizamo goes and takes a gun. He's like, this one's mine. So that's how they start to get guns. They have to go on and take these characters out. We have at one moment where we have one SWAT man that's kind of coming in right where Iris is. And so Bishop, who's to have these alcoholic bottles that are on fire, he tosses them on to this one, like, I'll say SWAT character. And he ends up like jumping out of this window, and is to try to tuck and roll to try to douse out these flames. So we have the captain on the outside who's starting to realize, like, oh, they must have armed their prisoners. Like, good move. So, like, as if we have the captain who's just like, these guys are smart. He's like giving them brownie points as we go along in this movie. He's like, yeah, like, they're really good. Like, why compliment them? Why shouldn't you just be very angry at your men, like every cliche-ish villain that has ever been in a movie? Like, hey, like, we should be way more like trained than they are. Why is it that we're going down so quickly? That's usually the normal problem. So these guys, one by one, keep coming in. Ethan ends up shooting one of them in the head. So it gets to the point where these like little drops here and there of these things, of these guys, like, it's not working. They're not getting the job done. So really what they're trying to think about doing next is to try to figure out if they can get somebody to leave. Like, having somebody just get in a car and drive like crazy to get the heck out of here. And they're wanting to have some kind of plan for them to try to send some kind of like search party or something. Because none of the phones work, because all the phones are dead, and none of the radio frequencies are dead either, because Jasper is saying, like, yeah, these guys are pros. So we have a moment where everybody's trying to figure out who's going to go. And Bishop is making the joke about, well, like, well, hey, I'll leave. I'll make sure whoever I go with is to look for help. And it's like, sure, Bishop, sure. We'll send you. Go ahead. No. So Anna has decided to go, and Dr. Sabian decides to go. And Jake is consistently asking Dr. Sabian, it's like, are you sure you want to go? Like, this doesn't seem right. So all of a sudden we have both Beck and Smiley who run off as this bus is caught on fire by these two men. And so both Smiley and Beck have a very short shelf life here, because we have a number of snipers that are kind of locating exactly where Smiley and Beck are. And so both Smiley and Beck are kind of hiding underneath these these little dips of snow. And the snipers are consistently adjusting, moving around to figure out where exactly these guys are. And so Smiley ends up getting clipped in the head after that happens, they can't go on and figure out where Beck is. And so Beck, who I guess isn't really thinking about this strategically well, he decides, well, I'm just going to go on and I'm just going to run and climb up on this fence and I'm just going to get out of here. No, not going to happen. Beck ends up sadly getting shot in the head, and we no longer have Ja Rule or Leguizamo in this movie, sadly, because they're both dead. So, while that's going on, we have Anna and Dr. Sabian, and Anna's to mention, like, oh yeah, I've hotwired a car before. And so they're like, oh, okay, so this will take no time for them to be able to go on and just get into this car, get out of there, and go. And so once they get into the car, both Anna and Sabian, now Jake is like waiting for them to get the car started, and Jake is like, why is this taking so long? So both Anna and both Sabian are, of course, driving like crazy after they get this car started. And so, of course, we have Anna turning to Sabian and saying, like, well, hey, like, that guy Jake, that sergeant, right? Like, he's your boyfriend. And Sabian's just like, no. Like, she's playing it off. And so they drive off. And so this car, of course, is to get shot up. And because we have a guy in the back seat who shoots the driver and then is to pull out Sabian. Sabian is to go back to the captain, and the captain, of course, is asking Sabian, it's like, well, how many people are in that police station? And Sabian's like, well, only 100. So the captain is just like, well, like, good for you. Pow. Dr. Sabian's is sadly dead, and we're like, no! The first time I ever watched this movie and I saw Dr. Sabian is dead, I was like, oh no. That has got to be like the worst character to have killed off. Because immediately we were thinking that something was going to happen between Jack and Sabian. But I guess we probably have to just naturally assume that maybe Iris and Jake, something's going to happen with them. Maybe with the way of which that this movie is to play out. So now we go on and we have that fail. And so now we're just realizing that these characters are like slowly but surely just going to die here. Like everything is just telling us that they're going to die. So Jasper is to realize that there is some secret underground thing that is going to get them to get the heck out of here, as we have this SWAT team that is on this roof of this police station trying to make its way in, as if this is like the end of Negotiator. So, yeah, I've seen the Samuel L. Jackson movie Negotiator. It's pretty good if you've never seen it. So, Iris is starting to fire up some bullets, and Jake is like, hey, don't waste your bullets. We don't know where they're at right now. So both Jake and Bishop are deciding to pour a ton of gasoline all over the police station, and they're going to set it ablaze, and then they're going to scramble under this underground exit to come out of this sewer system. So all of a sudden, once they make it out of the sewer, conveniently we have it where the captain and all of his men are to immediately figure out where exactly these guys are. And so immediately they're thinking that Capro is the guy who was to try and squeal on all these people, which actually isn't the truth. We find out that it was Jasper the whole time, because Jasper was to say in the beginning of all this that he was not going to die for Bishop, and that he was consistently sabotaging things, so they would just hand him over, which they never did. So now they're kind of forced to hand them over, while Jasper is to go on into this other vehicle and just like not see any of this really happening. But before Jasper does that, we of course have Bishop that talks smack to Jasper here, and it seems that Bishop is to have this little like frag grenade that he puts into Jasper's pocket that goes off and kills him. And so everybody's scrambling off because they're just caught underwear. Jake is starting to shoot through a number of people, and everybody's just starting to scramble off. We have both Capra and Iris. They're making it into this car. The car gets into an accident, tips over. There seems to be a guy named Mike who is trying to go on and take down both Iris and Capra. Iris is telling Capra to look dead as she is to go on and hit Mike with some kind of item of sorts and then stab him into the neck. So Mike is now dead. The seemingly partner of the captain on the villain side of things. So pretty much all the rest of the characters who are left, which is really just Bishop and really just Jake at this point, they're just running around into the forest. And so we have this consistent moment where Bishop is telling Jake, it's like, well, hey, our stuff's on pause. And so when all of a sudden, like, all the villain sides are all done, then it's like, hey, our stuff won't be on pause anymore. And so we'll go at it and see who gets it at the end, and so on and so forth. So because Bishop is to consistently talk about self-preservation, and that is the reason why consistently he would want to go on and partner with all these police officers, because it's saving his own neck. And so he's like, hey, don't say F you, like F with me, and all this kind of jazz. So we have these kind of weird, bizarre like words that are coming out of people's mouth throughout this movie, but it's so fun. So now we go on and we have it where Jake and Bishop are to meet back up with one another. And so Bishop is to have a gun on Jake and say, like, hey, like, is our stuff not on pause now? It's like, no, our stuff is still on pause because there's a number of guys still out here. So Jake is running around trying to draw these guys' fire as Bishop is going to shoot them down. And so Jake is telling Bishop to, like, shoot well, and Bishop is telling Jake to run fast. So Jake is pulling out these guys' fire to where Bishop can see where the fire is coming from, and so he starts clapping a bunch of them down, killing them down. So now the only person that is really left is the captain. So the captain is to go on and find Bishop and is to shoot him in the belly. So there is this consistent thing about Bishop who has gotten shot 5 times, and then in the later part of the movie, Bishop is to actually confirm that it was 6 times. Because we have Beck who's asking him while they're in the bus, like, hey, you got shot 5 times, right? And then Iris, of course, to try to reconfirm with Bishop while she's consistently thinking about SEX the whole time. And we, of course, have Bishop going on saying, it's like, well, yeah, that's the whole thing. Like love and sex are kind of like tandem with one another. And like sometimes you're probably thinking about like those same things while your life is probably going to end. So, or maybe you're probably making love while your life is ending. Because that might happen in some movies and some stories and some shows and some things. But moving on. So, we then go on within this movie, and the captain is saying for Bishop to call out for Jake, telling Jake that the captain is dead and Bishop won't do that. So Jake is to make his way back to the captain, and so that really just leads with the captain getting killed off here. And so now we're naturally assuming that Bishop is going to kill Jake. And because Jake is like, oh, well, it's about that time now, isn't it? And Bishop's like, yeah, it seems about that time. So Bishop goes and takes Jake's gun away from him, and we just have Bishop who runs off. Jake is saying to Bishop that at some point he's going to come for him, not any other police officer, just him, and he's going to hunt him down. So all of a sudden, Iris is to make it to this forest because Iris is to know exactly where Jake is, weirdly. Yeah, he definitely made it into this forest. I know exactly where he is. So Iris is making her way through this forest with all these firemen and these kind of rando police officers. And so this police officer is telling Jake, it's like, well, I have a number of questions for you, son. And Jake is just like, later. Like, I'll fill out whatever you need me to fill out, but off right now. Like, I have other things to do, like finish up a film. So as everyone is getting hauled off and hauled away in these ambulances, all this jazz, we of course have Iris that is talking to Jake and is like, you know what, you look pretty bad ASS tonight, Sergeant. And Jake is just like, well, yeah, we'll get used to it. It seems that was consistently throughout this movie talking about her desperately needing a smoke because I guess for her New Year's resolution, she's giving up smoking. But Jake is like, well, I didn't make that promise, so light it up. And so Jake is going on and smoking, and we have that now muffled, like, talking. And if there isn't one thing that I always hate in a movie is when somebody's mufflingly talking, but Jake is really having a huge amount of lines by the end of this film anyways. It's not as bad as when, like, I just saw Captain Marvel and, like, Nick Fury was going on eating the sandwich and he was like, I'm like, what? He's like, oh, you're science officer? I'm like, really? Funny thing, though, it's kind of funny how there is this weird, goofy joke about, like, Samuel Jackson getting confused with Lawrence Fishburne. I would never confuse the two. Uh, Hence why I'm immediately thinking at some point there's going to be, like, some movie where both Samuel Jackson and Lawrence Fishburne are going to be in the same film, because I'm assuming the guys are still working. Like, especially Lawrence Fishburne, I think he still does films. Like, I think he's just going on and kind of picking and choosing what really he still wants to do. So, with that said, I think I'm just going to get the heck out of here so I can go on and put this out for the day. So I'm going to go out of my way to say goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.